Say no more.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, an echo in here.
You can't have fun while you do this.
Yes. Okay, Lena, whenever you're ready to start, please start, ma'am.
Okay. This is Lena Hilliard on May 28th, 2014, and I am interviewing Cecil Steppe. Can you start by telling me how you first came to San Diego?
I came to San Diego when I was a year old. My mother and father were divorced, and my two brothers and I moved to San Diego to live with her sister, her brother, and her sister's husband. I've lived in San Diego for 80 of my 81 years of life.
Wow. Yeah. And can you tell me what has changed the most for you over the course of your life?
Well, first, in this community, being raised without a father, I had a community that embraced me and helped me to understand that I could do anything I chose to, and that there was only the limitations that I put on myself. Now, that's what they said. What the community told me beyond that was not true. But what I found in San Diego over the time was that when a door opens, you've got to have the willingness to go ahead and push through it, do the best you can. I was raised in an environment as a young African man that what you did was when you got married, you had children, you had a home, you got some insurance. No one ever talked to us about upward mobility. They simply said, get a job that has a retirement benefit, something that you can work hard at, and everything else will take care of itself. That was the general philosophy when I came through here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How have you seen the ideas of opportunity, bias, segregation, and equality develop over your lifetime?
Affirmative action was the linchpin for me personally, as well as a lot of others.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if affirmative action had not occurred, I would not have been able to accomplish all of the things that I was able to accomplish because the door was open. And everybody, I have no qualm about telling them, I was an affirmative action employee. But for 28 years in the probation department, and the last 12 of those years was a chief probation officer. It's the second longest reign of a chief probation officer in the history of San Diego.
Wow.
So affirmative action opened the door, but what I brought to the job, the intensity of service, the outcomes that were usable, and my spirit about helping others is what made me 12-year history with the probation department.
Mm-hmm.
So the door opened, the opportunity came, I was ready for it. I prepared to do whatever it took to get to whatever step. And again, remember now, I wasn't raised in an environment where upward mobility was talked about. But what I knew was that as a black young man, I had to work harder than anyone else. I had to prove and reprove myself every inch of the way. And so I consider those as challenges. And my attitude now, as well as then, was bring it on. But bring your lunch, you're going to have to hang with me for a while.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. This may be a little bit political, but what do you think about the recent kind of attacks on affirmative action that's occurring throughout America?
Well, I think there are two things that symbolize it. I think that when it's now an attack, it's because so many of us have been so successful. And I think, well, I got to go backwards now into history of slavery to really make the point that I want to make. In slavery, when you consider our historical legacies, look at all the gifts that slaves brought to this country, the inventions and slave attitudes. And it was a very clear indication. We didn't come from nothing when we came here in servitude. We had with us kings and queens in history and mathematics and all the rest of those things. And if you really stop and consider it, We were better equipped than most of the white pioneers. And so now all of a sudden, if you take that forward into this generation, if you start with this stereotype that as a black family, we're not capable of doing anything worthy of anything, and now affirmative action, in spite of that stereotype, opened the door, and we've been able to produce across the board. You can't think of a place we haven't been as a black population and been successful. Okay. If you can accept that part, then if you take it to the next step, it's, if I had the stereotype that you as a black person is incapable of doing anything worthwhile, now I've seen that you have accomplished, because in spite of that stereotype, they opened the door, they let us through, and we shined. Mm-hmm. And so now how do you take that stereotype and rebuild it if all the success has occurred? So you start closing the door. Mm-hmm. You got to keep the stereotype alive, and I think it's human condition. One wants to always be higher than the next, and you always want to be in a position, if you're the dominant party, which is no longer in existence, you know, we're outnumbering them, not us as a black community, but if you put black and brown together, we are the majority. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I'm the kingmaker and the power broker, I want to make sure I keep you in your place, because I can't feel good about me unless I can feel bad about you. Mm-hmm. That's how I visualize it.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, Lena, I'm glad you did that, because I was hoping you would elaborate on it, and you
Mm-hmm.
did. Which leads me, I want to ask him one question, if I may.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what was affirmative action designed to do, in your opinion?
Affirmative action, in my opinion, was designed to give opportunity to the underserved population. Maybe it was a guilt reaction. Maybe it was an opportunity for the majority of people to understand, well, maybe there is a wealth of knowledge, skills, and ability in this population, and if you're smart enough, you want to extract the best you can get. I hope that's what it was. But I have to say, in all honesty, it was probably a very small minority of very liberal thinking white population power brokers that wanted to do this because perhaps they had an understanding of the downtrodden nature of our communities over time. I'm an optimist. It pays for me to look at both sides of the coin, but I got to believe in the other side that says, okay, you open the door, get out of my way, here I come.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Moving on. What does personal and political freedom mean to you?
Oh, that's a good one. Personal and political freedom means that I have the right to select who is going to represent me, to put all of my energy and my finances behind that person with the hope and the understanding that they're going to serve my long and short-term interests, the interest of my community as well as my family and me personally. I'm not going to do anything that doesn't have it's a human characteristic, not an ethnic behavior. And so part of me says, I guess I only have one statement. Bring it on. I never retreat from anything. It's always, to me, do your best shot. But bring your lunch, because you have to hang with me for a little while. I do not give up easily.
Okay. Thank you. What was your earliest experience with the Urban League?
1956, when I got out of the Air Force, coming back from Korea, I was working as a janitor downtown at the House of Fabrics. I was married. I was buying a home under the GI Bill. I was going to school and raising children. I had a job that used to pay me so little, and I used to pray, if I could ever make $100 in a week, it was like I died and gone to heaven. And so the Urban League, I knew the Urban League from its very beginning in San Diego. The first executive director of the Urban League here was Percy Steele. at that point, the bus company was owned by a family, the Hall, H-A-U-G-H family. And they had decided they were going to hire their first black bus drivers. This is 1956. All right? So I was called to Mr. Percy's office downtown on Fifth Avenue, and he told me that they were opening opportunities for black bus drivers at the bus company, which is right down on 16th and Imperial. So he asked me if I'd be interested. I said, man, I'd kill to get a better job than what I've got. So I went down, had my interview. They liked what they saw in me, but they had met their emotional quota. They had hired 3 before me, 3 men. And so I thought, well, okay. But whatever it was that I struck a chord in them, they offered me an opportunity to go into the mechanical department and asked me would I take that one. I said, of course I would. And so I started as a bus cleaner. And I worked my way into the mechanical department. And it was an opportunity because I did indeed make more than $100 a week. And I did feel like I had died and gone to heaven. But it was working full time. During the summer, I would work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, including going back to the House of Fabrics, helping them at the same time, and going to school full time and raising my children. And it took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree while going to school full time and working. Mm-hmm. And so my last day as a mechanic with the bus department was my first day as a probation officer. Okay. And so it's just kind of a golden opportunity that Percy Steele made available to me. And I've always enjoyed what the Urban League has been able to do and to some degree continues to do today. But I've known every president, CEO of the Urban League, and for 6 years served as the president and CEO of the Urban League before I retired from here. Mm-hmm. So the Urban League has been strong in this community for all this period of time. Okay. It had its ups and downs, like any organization. Mm-hmm. Nonprofit work is not the easiest thing in the world. But I'm just very pleased with what they've been able to accomplish over time.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the examples of the Urban League's role in the civil rights movement here specifically?
Well, I think if you talk to people like Hal Brown and some of the others who were on the front lines, you see, I was not part of the movement mm-hmm. in that sense. When I came back from Korea, my pastor, Bethel Baptist Church, asked me, because they were doing some picketing of Woolworth and Cress's downtown, and he asked me if I would join, and I said I can't. Well, of course, that encouraged some conversation. Pastor Ham, I am not nonviolent. You know, I had just spent my time in the war zones, mm-hmm. and if someone was going to spit on me, I was going to hurt them. And so I took a back seat. Al Brown and the US organization, some of the rest of them. My role, I think, was more working underground than it was being above ground, mm-hmm. because I was a violent, angry, black young man when I came home from the service. And it was not anything within me that was going to allow me to be a pacifist. You strike at me, I'm going to strike back at you. Mm-hmm. I have since changed a lot, but at that time, and there's a whole lot of war stories that kind of conflict with some of those things. But I think the Urban League has always been much involved, mm-hmm. from a leadership angle, job development, placement, housing. And I think that if you look at the civil rights movement in this community, there are pieces all around this house. But you have 1 or 2 very strong activists that were out front doing all of the, Hal Brown, for instance. I knew Hal when he began to picket the Bank of America. And it was always intriguing to me. I could not have done that. Mm-hmm. But I'm pleased that Hal and some of the rest of them had the grit to be able to do that. It's the same thing I feel about the young college students who were able to sit at a lunch counter and have people torment and throw stuff on them. And the older people who died just trying to vote. Those kind of things resonate very deeply with me. And while I know I could not have done that, or I don't think I could have, I know I wouldn't want to have done that. I'm grateful to God that there were those in our community that felt so strongly about it that they were willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I will always support that.
Mm-hmm. So, are you familiar with the term Mississippi of the West?
Yes, I am.
So can you tell me your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's the truth. I've seen San Diego go from a small hick town to a large hick town. And I've always defined it as Mississippi West. It created the illusion of fairness that didn't exist and still does not exist. Mm-hmm. There is the sunshine. I remember the migration during the World War II, where you had a lot of individuals coming from Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama. And the war industry in this community, with a consolidated aircraft factory and all of those things, is what brought the migration this way. What I have found in San Diego through my history here, those that have been productive usually were those that came from the South to San Diego. And the reason I feel that way is because when I think of my cohort, the people of my age all growing up together in this community, a lot in jail, a lot dead, a lot having done nothing of value. And when I look at the people who have done outstanding things in this community, I can migrate from the South directly here and see. And I think that is stemmed on the basis that when you're coming from an environment like the South, where it was very clear that education was extremely important to those that migrated, because when you've been denied something and now you have an opportunity to capture that, mm-hmm. there is a strong desire and a sense of needing to do it. And I see that as the difference between those in the South who suffered directly to those in the North who had the illusion of fairness and equity. And I think that Mississippi South is a very good commentary, because I equipped myself with the idea of what was occurring in the 60s in the South and the absence of that direct relationship here, but a very indirect. I remember very distinctly in this town where, as a young black man, or a black man period, in La Jolla after dark, the police were going to stop you. Same occurred in Coronado. When we were going to Imperial Valley over a whole highway, by the time you had all your windows rolled up. Or when you were going through National City, you did the same thing when you were going to Tijuana. Because you had a lot of the military people from the South who got out of the service and stayed here, because this is a retired town, that I think they brought with them the attitudes, a segregated military, a segregated South, and then it comes in here now, and the pioneers at that time were typically white retired military personnel, because we have every branch of the service when I was a kid in this town. And the thing that I enjoy most, I remember at Campbell, where we now have a boys' facility in custody, that was where the 10th Cavalry existed. And you could be at the plaza downtown, and you could see coming up Broadway all these white caps from the sailors, and it was just like a sea of bobbing heads. Mm-hmm. But we had the Coast Guard, the Marines, the Army, the Cavalry, and all of that would congregate right into downtown San Diego. Mm-hmm. It was just an incredible sight. Mississippi West? Yeah. Is it still Mississippi West? Yeah. Mm-hmm. In a moderated form, but I think that the moderation is based on those that have been able to overcome the obstacles, both in academic, educationally, as well as in the business venture. And when I look at some of the people that you're going to interview, they are going to be able to give you some very direct insight to how they got where they were. You're going to enjoy them if you can believe them. Because some of the stuff that we had to go through here, in a lot of ways, is unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think we can do today, my generation especially, can do today to really improve the condition of minorities here?
Well, that's a good question. It's a very difficult one to answer. You see, part of me says, start by understanding those who went before you, and understand that the opportunities you have now that too many of our young people are wasting is based on what some of us had to do to give you the opportunity. I don't ask to be praised, nor do I ask to be tolerated. What I ask more than anything, let our sacrifices be something of value as you take us to the next level. Don't disappoint me, because we went through too much to be able to go backwards now. And I'm seeing too many signs now that our younger people aren't taking a lot of this. I shouldn't say younger people. There are a lot of youth who don't really understand the opportunities before them. And I don't blame them 100%, because I think we've created a pipeline to prison because we have not inculcated our kids with the educational attitudes of achievement. And the world is made of C students, and we spend a lot of time with the A+ students. I don't say that's wrong. I'm just simply saying there's a whole underbelly. We need to reach down there too. Because when you look at it, we're overpopulated, black and brown, in prison. We're overpopulated in foster care. We are in a position where welfare was designed to be helpful, but turned out to be one of the most destructive things we've ever done. We drove men out of the house. We told women, your government is a better provider than any man could ever be. But we gave the welfare recipient money far less than we know they really needed to survive. And then we look at it in 6 months and decided they lied, stole, and did everything they could. Well, what in the name of heaven would you expect someone to do? Yeah, that's a whole nother day. I'll have to do a whole tape on that one.
If I could rephrase the question, the question you just asked. You say, what can you as a young person do? I'm going to ask it another way and see if I get the same answer. What do they need to know? Because we all want to do. It's easy to do something. But what is it that the young people like Lena and others need to know about, in order to make our world a better world, right? I'm just going to change your do to know and see if we get the same answer. Did I flip you there, sir?
No. I just want to make sure that I'm on target with my response. They need to know from whence they come. You see, I think we build off of and stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. But if you don't know you're standing on someone's shoulders, then you just begin to believe your own press clippings that you're all that in a bag of chips. And you're capable, but you're not as qualified as you can be until you begin to understand what it takes to get to those next levels. What did it take others to be able to get that opportunity for you to be able to go to that higher level? And it doesn't mean that you are unworthy. It simply means there is a heartfelt interest in knowing, how did this happen for me? And it doesn't mean that you've got to belittle yourself by saying, I'm unworthy. That's not my issue at all. It's simply, it's the dues that you now pay for those who open the door to allow you the opportunities you have. And I think sometimes the acknowledgement of that, and I don't mean acknowledgement like falling to your knees and babbling in the wind. I'm not talking about that. I'm simply talking about, I think the phrase they use now is pay going forward. You now, as a young person, with the opportunities that were afforded you, have to pay that going forward. You have to create now shoulders for that generation beyond you to be able to climb to the next level. I think, to me, that's about the cleanest way I can say. What can you do? There is nothing you can't do. The only impediment to not being able to do it is for you not to dream it's capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My next question is about the urban
The
league.
last one? Oh, no.
Not the last one.
Okay.
About the Urban League. While you were CEO, what do you think was your greatest accomplishment, or something that you remember the most?
Oh, gosh, there's so many memories. I think my greatest accomplishment was watching our educational program for the youth, the Golden Pyramid Award, as well as the educational training that took place on campus here on Tuesday evenings, where our kids would come in, and for 2 hours they were being provided with a kind of educational enrichment that they weren't getting in the schools. Mm-hmm. That's one. I think the other accomplishment that I'm still enjoying is we had, as part of our educational program, Gompers Middle School was the most violent school in this community. And a student that was part of our group came in and indicated to us they were going to close our school down. We had always taken a position in terms of our young people. We're not going to do it for you. We're going to help you do what you need to get done. You know, when you begin understanding the Fourth Amendment and the 15th Amendment, and being able to understand those as rights and responsibilities. And so what we did was we moved with them and with the community, embracing University of California at San Diego, and developed a charter school. And I can't begin to tell you how much of a that really was. That was one heck of a fight, and continues. Mm-hmm. But we're now in our 9th year as a high school from 6th to 12th grade, and all of that is based on what a small group of students who were matriculating here after school hours, who wanted their school to continue, and a group of us in the Urban League deciding we're going to help you accomplish your goal. And when I see now some of the young people who are now teachers, one is a doctor. At Gompers, we have one of the students that was part of our group here, young professional now, who is the Dean of Students at Gompers. What am I proud of? Well, I'm proud of the fact that we as a community organization had the grit and the willingness to listen to our kids and help our kids and their families really begin to produce. Mm-hmm. Every time I go to the Golden Pyramid Award ceremony and I see how it's grown so strong over these years, I'm thinking, a small group of pioneers called the Urban League, San Diego County, were responsible for the birth of this. So I've got other memories, but those are the two that really jump out at me. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Now, I know that you are related to a woman named Rebecca Kraft.
Yes.
And I heard that she is very important in San Diego's African American history. Is there anything that you can tell me about her?
Oh, gosh, you got a day or two? She's responsible in my mind for everything that I'm all about. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it was what it was. She developed, well, first let me say this. Give me a handful of angry black women. Men need to understand this. They can solve any problem that we have. into me when I look at the history and I began to see I'm witnessing without knowing what I'm witnessing the first black police officers in this community, the first black teachers. My Aunt Rebecca and my mother were both teachers in Kentucky, but when they came to San Diego, they couldn't get a teaching job here. And part of it was, as a child, on Sunday, I was always required of my two brothers to come to the dinner table with shirt and tie, and we always had a full spread. My Aunt Rebecca believed in politeness, but she was also a tough lady. And she really, very diplomatically, took on the power structure in this community. Okay? And so these band of ladies, I always think of Miss Van Lowe, first black teacher coming from El Centro, and the first male, Professor Payne, came out of the South. He had a doctorate and was teaching in high school. And it was the most incredible thing, because when I was in high school, he was still there teaching. But at the same time, when I look at these women, and in our home, we would be required to be in attendance, and some of the politicians running for office, the mayor would be there, and I'm sitting there in these wool clothes in the middle of summer, scratching and itching, and being forced to sit there and listen. I don't know what I'm listening to, but I do know my behavior today is based on some of the things by osmosis that snuck into my being. Mm-hmm. So I hold her responsible, and I hold me accountable to her image to do everything that I've been trying to do. But it's the same thing with our kids, and let me move it in that direction. If you as a young person don't have an opportunity to be in those environments, like I was fortunate enough to be in that environment, how do you ever know what it really takes to get it done? There's so much sham and gambling and junk going on with our politicians. It makes politics something that a lot of our young people don't even want to think about. And yet, there's power in politics. But who wants to go through all the ugliness that you've got to go through? I've been asked several times to run for office, and I'm saying, that's not my ball game. I wouldn't even be a full one-term elected official. Mm-hmm. I'd hurt somebody. So, my Aunt Rebecca, and she wasn't the only one. And I think that, I can't remember his name, but the park up the road is named after him. Anytime a black person wanted to get a job in government, they always went through either the Women's Civic League or, I can't remember his name. Allen. Yeah. And he had a direct connection with employment. And so, gosh, San Diego black community, you could really see it when you come down to 16th Street on Imperial, over to 32nd Street, and before you had 94, that was Federal Boulevard, and then down to what is now Harbor Drive. That was our community. On Sundays, I always remember this because my uncle used to drive his Lincoln Zephyr, a 1941 Lincoln Zephyr, and he'd park it on Imperial Avenue. My mother and my aunt would sit in the car, and Imperial Avenue was Black Broadway. It was like an Easter parade every Sunday. You had insurance, Golden State was there. You had the Black and Tan. You had Johnson's Barbecue, and you had just a migration of black faces up and down this road, and brown, because a lot of our neighbors were Hispanic. Mm-hmm. But there was not much distinction between. The only distinction, and I'll say this because I think it still exists, the darker the skin, the more deprived you were given. A dark Hispanic was always considered chocolatero. And it's what we do. Light complexion, white, almost white, dark. The old story was the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. I'm rambling, so stop me.
Actually, can you expand a little bit on the relationship between African Americans and Latino Americans during that time?
During that time, we were neighbors. You know, we didn't have distinctions between us. We lived with each other. We ran up and down as kids. I counted some of my strongest friends were Hispanic. Across the street, we had Japanese families. It was San Diego was much integrated in a ethnic level. And so we really didn't do, there's no fighting. There was brotherhood, sisterhood. We got along just fine. But I think that prosperity is what begins to bring the ugliness of racism forward. Yeah, it's incredible. A couple of bucks will change a man's complexion, change his attitude, and change his behavior. You know, the old story, I used to be a Democrat until I got a good job. Now I'm a Republican. That's a little side San Diego humor.
Yeah.
But no, it was not a problem. As a young man raised without a father, the coach of the boys club, Augie Escamilla, a young college student, he was the father figure for a lot of us. And I loved that man as a father figure all of my life until he just died last year.
Wow.
And it was the kind of thing was, you know, as a young man playing sports, you'd have a father-son night. I didn't have a father to take with me, but Augie would go. And so that was the kind of relationships that were going on. But in this community, you only had two places where young people could gather. When they came up with the boys club, before it became a boys and girls club, then you had the shack at Logan Elementary School. Those were the two places. Other than that, you ran the street. Other than staying in church, gosh, Sunday was church day. From Sunday school all the way to BYPU. And Lord have mercy, I used to say, I'm tired of this. Tired of this. In fact, let me show you how this town worked. When I was a young man, and there was a theater right down on Imperial, about 26, the Victory Theater. And I had met this young lady, and I really liked her. And I had saved my little nickels and dimes, because you could go to the movie at that point for 15 cents. Bag of popcorn for a nickel. And I was supposed to be at BYPU, and I snuck off because I was going to meet this young lady at the theater. And to show you how the community worked, no matter how I maneuvered my way, because I lived on 29th and Imperial, and Bethel Baptist was at 29th and Clay. And I made my way into the theater, and I'm sitting there in the theater, and I finally got enough courage to put my arm around the girl. And I looked up, and there was my mother. Because we weren't supposed to go to the movie on Sunday. But what had happened, and I'm telling you this because that was the nature of the community, someone saw me walk into that movie. And they also knew the family values, what my mother didn't appreciate, and called my mother, who came to the theater. And I have never felt so humiliated in all my life.
Oh, wow.
And marched me all the way home. Didn't say two words. My mother was the kind of person. She'd say, "Take off your pants," because you knew you were going to get a whipping. But the kind of whipping my mother gave was even worse than if it was a man with a bullwhip beating on you. She'd make you go out and get a switch off the peach tree. And sometimes, you know, I was always kind of a class clown anyway. I'd cut little notches in it. And so she'd hit me and it would crumble. And she'd laugh and make me go get another one. Only this time I had to get a bigger one. But she didn't whip you anywhere but on your legs. Mm-hmm. And make you dance like you were jitterbugging. Man, you talk about hurt and sting. And so when she got me home, that's what she did. And I still remember that. That really knocked me to my knees. 'Cause gorgeous young lady. I was on the move too, but had my nickel and my popcorn. I was ready. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was the nature of the community. Okay. Everybody knew you. You knew everybody. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay, last question.
Oh no, I'm just getting started.
What would you like for your legacy to be?
That I did the very best I could with what I had. Mm-hmm. That I took full advantage of opportunities, but I spent a lot of my time trying to open the doors for others. Every job I've ever held, I always felt it was my responsibility as the leader to create an environment that brought people upward. I didn't want anybody around me that wasn't upward mobile. Anybody was satisfied to come in at an entry level and retire there, I would tell them without equivocation, you don't belong here. I don't want anybody around me that doesn't want to take my job. So how do I want to be remembered? I really want to be remembered as he did the best he could and opened as many doors as were possible. That's how I'd like to be remembered. Mm-hmm. You know, other than that, he did it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Williams. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Oh no, I would like to say that this is the second best, and not because it's one or two. If I can classify, you know, another good one that I've had. Since I've been here in San Diego for interviewing and talking to people, we talked before, and before we talked about cultural brokers and everything, this just adds on to that. I might want to say also that the part about Ms. Kraft, I knew nothing about. Mm-hmm. Lena did the research on that, mm-hmm. and I said, yeah, let's ask him about that because I had no idea.
Oh,
that
yeah.
There's such a legacy like that with your aunt.
Mm-hmm.
You know? That's terrific, man. Mm-hmm. And so I saw when you was answering the questions, you know, it brought joy to you, you know, too. Mm-hmm. And you know, she's responsible for, you know, for that, digging that information up. Mm-hmm. And see, this is why I'm glad we're doing what we're doing with our kids, because they go and find information that I didn't even know was there, you know. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting here thinking about Mr. Steppe, you know, and who influenced him greatly in his life. It was a bunch of women.
Oh yeah, oh
it was
yeah.
A bunch of women, man. You know that's the reason that we're able to get what we're getting from you today, and how that's going to really, you know, bless other people or touch other people. Mm-hmm. I remember when Morial was here, when Mark was here. He really hit home with me when he said that we're urban leaders. Mm-hmm. Remember that? Oh yeah. And you know, you mentioned something again that we talked about was the movement. That mm-hmm. word came up again. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, this is really good stuff. Really
and there's nothing stronger in the movement than when I went to my first national conference.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's when, you see, I was invited to serve here. Mm-hmm. And I was invited, you know, I had spent 28 years in probation, and then I took on the Department of Social Services for 6 years, then retired. And I'd had my bout with prostate cancer. Mm-hmm. And so when they came to me, I was over at the church digging ditches, trying to get some fencing so we could bring the youth program there. And Jimmy McWilson came over and said, Cecil, we'd like for you to join us. I said, man, I don't want a job. I've done all my work. You know, I was over 65 at the point. And I thought, so he kept persisting. I said, well, I'll tell you what, bring me your finances so I can see how you are financially. So he did that. And then it began to push on me. They were having financial difficulty. Their image was beginning to be just a wee bit tarnished. My attitude was, how can I say no to something as important as the Urban League if they think I can do something of value to help?
Sure.
See, I just think that's our responsibility. It's not a question of age. It's not a question of fatigue. It's a question of you have a responsibility to give. And so that's when I came here.
Yeah.
And 6 years, I tell you, it was a transition for me, coming out of government, coming into nonprofit, working with a board, and some of the drama that goes on and those kind of, and I thought, Lord have mercy, I don't know if I,
Yeah. Yes.
what have I got myself into here? But it was one of those things, and I'm really grateful. This is where the legacy of my Aunt Rebecca and some of those ladies come into being when you don't quit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it was almost, my desire was my first Urban League conference, and I'm looking around, 100 affiliates. I have never seen that many black people in one place in all my life. And to think that each of them, as I began to know different affiliates and what they were doing, then I could begin to grasp a movement concept rather than a job assignment.
Yes.
And I think that we had a wonderful opportunity. We've had 2 of our president's major visits to San Diego, to the Urban League.
Wow.
You know?
And I guess the second one was the one when he was here a couple
Yeah,
of weeks ago.
Moriel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, it's, this is awesome. This is awesome.
But you gotta see it, because movement is not something you see. You gotta feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got to understand that we're hooked together. It is not an intellectual hooking as much as it is a visceral hooking,
Yes.
because we're all aimed at the same thing in different places, but all for the same reason. How do we enhance our community and open doors of opportunity? And some have done it better than others.
And that's what keeps me coming here. I remember when I first got here, and we were talking, and I asked you a question, and you told me, you said, yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Because I was concerned about, this Urban League. But then when I made the national connection, it gave what I do here a lot more credibility, a lot more value, because now I began to see the Urban League is not just affiliate, but this whole big entity that's movement, this thing that's really thriving. And so I took a different outlook. I took a different approach to everything I did. Working with Lena, I've been able to talk with and to work with some of our best minds in the city, some of the best young minds in the city. I tell Lena and them that all the time, because when I was coming up, nobody told me that. Never heard those things. Oh boy, when you gonna do this, or when you gonna do that? Why can't you be like this? And so when I see our kids today, man, I'm always encouraging them. And my goal back is to build this, get this thing going, build this, to where they could have something, and talking to people. I mean, you my hero. You, Carol Wayne, all the other people I've talked to since I've been here, that has so many things that I didn't even know about, man. And so that encourages me. You know why I get up I get up in the morning every day, like they pay me 6 figures here. Get up 5:45, get myself together, come here, like I'm, they paying me all this money. And I have to ask myself, man, why you do that? You know, you know, you know, go and do something else. But it's like I'm tied to this community now. I'm tied to the to something really bigger than what I am. You know, and I try to pass that on. So, and like I said, people like yourself. That's why I love you, Steph. I love you, Cecil Steph, Mr. Steph.
No.
Whatever I'm allowed to call you, because you.
Just don't call me him.
I won't do that. I mean, you're an inspiration to me, and I try to pass that down. So when I'm talking about a lot of stuff, sometimes I know Lena and I talk. We were talking the last 2 weeks, man, more than anything. And I know sometimes when I'm talking about stuff, you know, she don't right away get it and everything. And if there's one thing I really want you to get, and you said it, man. You said, I was thinking about it this morning. It's not about, it's what's in here. It's got to be, you know, I want you to feel it. I want you to feel the struggle. I want you to trace places with one of these folks up there and imagine what it was like, you know, to make that, the migration journey, or to imagine living during the times that they're living. Man, I was born in 1954. This is in my blood. I mean, stuff I don't know about that I was, you know, enculturated and went into my subconscious and everything. And I wondered why, you know, why you like this now? Well, look at when you were born, you know. You came through it and didn't even know you were going through it, but it was put inside you, you know. And so the heartfelt thing, feeling trade places with somebody, you know, you see a young lady up there or something like that. Imagine you are that young lady, and your parents are taking you to a different place, to a better place. The perception was that it was better and everything. I believe black folks back then were dreaming, man. They were heavy. They saw an opportunity. Well, I guess some of them said, well, anything got to be better than this. And they went and they went on that you know, on that journey. So that's thank you, sir.
And that's why I admire the Jewish community.
Yeah.
See, their attitude and where I think our community, I've heard some of the negative sides of it.
Sure, yeah.
I've heard some of the elders talk about why we want to translate all that to our kids. The same reason the Jews do. They have the attitude, you'll never, ever again allow this to happen. Well, we need to tell our story, but we need to tell it in a, not a forceful way, but in a honest, straightforward way. See, because we've had poverty pimps, we've had some of our folks do us wrong, and will always do us wrong. And I always think backwards to Willie Lynch and what he said, and I see the results of that everywhere I go.
I got a copy of that around here somewhere. I keep it with me to remind me. There's some things I want to be reminded of.
Oh, you betcha.
Because what did they say? Because if you don't want it to happen again, you need to know what happened so it won't happen again.
Yeah.
Well, I never thought that they would repeal the 1964.
Oh,
what
yeah.
was that?
Yeah.
Man, who would have thought they would have done anything like that? That gave us the right to vote and to, you know, the freedom. And so now they've got this thing. I haven't even read it yet. It's all, you know, it's like, so if they did that, if they were allowed to do that, what else will they be allowed to do to ship away to where we're, you know, not us, you know.
The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
And all because we've got the first black president. They won't give that man credit for, you know, it's the other day I was watching them and it just really kind of got to me a little bit. They were talking about he was slow to respond to the Veterans Administration issue. And I said to myself, do you realize what this man has been faced with? The vets issue was, while it was important, you had floods, you had tornadoes, you had fires, you had wars, you had all kinds of things happening across this universe. And I look at that man when he first came into office, there wasn't a gray strand of hair anywhere.
He's white now. I noticed that too. He's looking good. Now he's they've been beating him up.
Oh, yeah. But see, he's a prime example that I want our kids to understand. in spite of the obstacles, perseverance is your responsibility.
Sure.
Now, he got reelected. That made him madder, and it made him mad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you began to see them cut at him more and more and more. And I'm thinking, okay, Mr. Tea Party, bring it on. Bring it on.
I understand now a little bit more, and I don't know if you got that. The violent and the nonviolent approach is probably part of the reason why the Urban League really couldn't get involved, and I could be off on this fully, like, because everybody didn't think nonviolent.
Mhm.
You know, if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back, you know. Or I might take the first lick, but if you come back with a second lick, I have no guarantees. And you approach that in a way that, on what you believe. Because if we get the Urban League involved, look, you're nonviolent. It's kind of like a Malcolm X and a Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those guys wanted to work together, and Malcolm would always tell ML, he said, look, if that doesn't work, I got your back. We got something that will work.
Well, see, that's the Urban League.
Yeah,
See, it strategically places itself
yeah.
when you have, and I think you always need an antagonist,
Oh, you do. You do.
but the Urban League and people on this side of the house, they have to, and that's why you don't hear the Urban League bad-mouthing the antagonist,
Mm-hmm.
because strategically, you raise all the hell over here, I'll come in and we'll accomplish our goal, because your raising hell is what allows us to accomplish our goal.
That's right. That's
See,
the
because
game plan right
now
there.
I'm the alternative. You want war? Stay over here. The Panthers will give you all the war you could ever handle. But you want peace and tranquility and an environment that is equitable? But my belief is that you got to do it with a clear understanding of that's what it is.
Okay.
What we spend a lot of time in communities talking about is bad-mouthing the rest of them without understanding, let's be strategic with our relationships. Because I can't win if there's not an opposition.
That makes a lot of sense.
But I can't blame him.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
got to understand him. We got to have our underground conversation. See, there's some things, family talk, that needs to occur. Okay?
Let him do what he do, because him doing what he's doing is going to help me do what I need to do, because you're both going the same way. That's interesting. That's interesting.
And if we don't do it, it's not going to happen for us. See, power doesn't give itself up.
I mean, but like you said just a minute ago, understanding that, with a clear understanding that that's what's happening and that's how we're going about it.
And that's what's missing now.
Ah, wow.
See, we're so busy in that whole crabs in the bucket kind of attitude.